you, Alan. Hello, everyone. Okay, so at GoContact, we believe that contact center technology can actually be made simple. We believe that the operations staff shouldn't be held hostage by the IT staff anymore. And we develop a contact center platform that actually tries to empower contact center operations. So we do this by serving our customers, actually developing software that they can understand on the contact center floor and not just on the IT room, okay? So I'm João Caminada. I'm the founder and CTO for GoContact. And I think 10 years ago, I was the owner of a contact center, and I was in need of contact center technology. But one of my main lines of thought in acquiring contact center technology was that I did not want the technology to be managed by the IT staff. I wanted the operations guys to actually manage on a day-to-day basis. So I'm talking about, setting up IVRs and doing reporting and managing the agents and etc. And of course, that's mostly focused on interface usage, on bringing telecommunications up to the interface layer and displaying information in a way that a contact center guy that is a contact center operations guy can actually understand it. So I haven't found anything at that point inside my budget as well. That was important. So I started out playing with open source. So that got me into open source-based contact center. And so GoContact for the years of 2010 until 2013 was actually based on the VCDial open source project. Anyone knows VCDial? Okay, a few guys. So this is mostly an American project. It's mostly focused on outbound. And at that point, it was based on Asterisk 1.4. That was a nice experience. So the database was MySQL. It was running on OpenSUSE. And most of the coding in the backend was Perl and AGI. So AGI was a way of getting information out of Asterisk and also inputting some commands into Asterisk, like place a call, please. This was a nightmare, by the way, all this cycle between Perl and AGI. We were running the Apache HTTP server, of course, and the front end was mostly, the regular stuff. We ended up migrating all this stack into CentOS using OpenVZ to manage the containers. Because we ran into several, problems with OpenSUSE, mostly security problems. We actually had the phishing site inside one of our servers at a certain point. Well, that was a big problem. One of the main problems with this architecture was that it was single tenant and no redundancy. It means that, if the server goes down, contact center has a problem, and contact centers don't like when servers go down. So we started the new stack from scratch. We started out with CentOS again, but now using Pacemaker for high availability. Changed the database to Postgres. We thought that Postgres at that point was more of an enterprise project. We added Redis. This is a very, very good project in terms if you want to get actual performance. And then we switched to FreeSwitch. So one of the main decisions behind switching to FreeSwitch was that FreeSwitch would actually provide you with a decent API at that point. And Asterisk did not have the RESTful API it has today. If my decision was today based on that point alone, I think Asterisk is actually better at this point. Somewhere down the line, our FreeSwitch server started crashing, so we needed to add Camille to handle all the SIP. So that was a good decision as well. And everything that is, more business logic driven is now written into Node.js. We keep the Apache HTTP server for static content, and now we are using a project called OpenResty that it's based on the Nginx HTTP server to handle everything that is API related. So we moved on, and so we now have a multi-tenant master-slave in some points, master-master in another points architecture that keeps us going with a much better SLA than having no redundancy, of course. Okay, so right now the main challenges for our architecture is, of course, high availability. So we're going to finish this year with 99.98% on our own metal. This we feel is not enough, so we are moving forward to make some changes. Real-time processing, so mostly voice channels, chat, and dashboards are real-time dependent, and you need your stuff to keep up. And it's not just the media, it's the information getting on the screen on the right time when you start to scale, and keeping those two in line is very, very important. High calls per second availability. So we run a lot of outbound operations, and we have power and predictive dialers. They can easily trash a free switch server. You don't need that much calls. So you need to keep that in check as well. And of course, deployment and orchestration. So we are running on 6 data centers between Portugal and Spain, around 60 servers at this point. We do 2 major releases each year, around 60 miners. So we only run a single version of the software between all the metals. So we need to keep everything in line as well. So 19 clusters, doing around 200 million calls per year. This year, actually, we're growing, of course. And from my estimation, we are running around 2 terabytes of data in our Postgres clusters at this point. So it's for our scale, it's numbers that we are trying to tackle with just open source software, and it's being great. So decisions around open source software. So best decisions, from my opinion, Redis is a very, very, very good project. It's probably the only piece of software that we are running that we never saw actually crashing. Development or production, don't care, it doesn't crash. If you don't run out of RAM memory, it never crashes. Even if you run out of RAM, I don't think it crashes though, but it's very good. Postgres, if you know your stuff, it's probably one of the most stable databases. You need to keep one of the main challenges that we have we currently don't have, but had in the past, was actually disk performance. So we swapped out to full NVMEs and a lot of attention to hardware, because if you want to do a lot of reporting, and contact centers need to do a lot of reporting, and if you want to download a few million lines in a few seconds, you need to have the throughput to actually be able to do it. Of course, writing good queries also helps. CentOS, the operating system, is fantastic from our perspective for what we do. We run free switch on CentOS, even though everyone runs on Debian, but we like the CentOS a lot. So Camilio, the project is great. The community is also great. Every time we get a chance to meet up with Daniel, is also great. So I think the project will have a lot to give in the future. A word for the NetData guys. NetData, the monitoring tool. It's really, really useful from our perspective. We run NetData on every server, and then we aggregate into Elasticsearch. And it's been very fun as well to develop modules. I think we're going to release an open source module that connects FreeSwitch to NetData for monitoring. So. And running our own cloud. So we mostly run on our servers. We have some cases where the customer provides servers, but 99% is our own servers. So running our own cloud has been very good for us in some aspects. Namely, I can tell you flexibility, the ability to tackle some projects that the customer is not interested in being outside the country with their data. So it has been a very good experience. So not so sure. So things we are considering for the future. Free switch. Mostly it will depend on the future of the management of the project. Actually, I think it's the same point for Asterisk. Everyone is asking the same questions. I think everyone is also hoping nothing changes, but that's not the way of life. Everything changes. So let's see. One thing that we might do is try and be agnostic and support both asterisk and free switch and maybe other stuff as well. It's not that trivial. So Elasticsearch and Kibana, we are using this a lot for IT purposes and also now for reporting. Not so sure. Let's see in the future. I think we only have like 2 years of investment in it, so it's not enough time to actually see if it's going to be the main solution for the future. Probably going to phase out Apache and just focus on Nginx. Apache has been very good to us. It's very, you don't waste that much time with it, and it works. But it's also a bit heavy, so maybe in the future we'll let it go. So bad decisions. MongoDB, sorry MongoDB guys, we didn't get along. We tried to use it for something it wasn't made to be used. So that's a mistake. We tried to use it for mostly, aggregation, statistical aggregation, and then we had to perform a lot of queries. You shouldn't use NoSQL like that. So InfluxDB was the first choice. Before we actually moved to Elastic, we tried Influx for statistics as well. It didn't scale, actually. It ran out very fast. I think it might do for some IoT scenarios where you don't have, you don't need to keep a lot of information on the past. It's mainly real time. But for contact centers, I don't think it works. So Grafana, we tried to switch Grafana to be more user, like end user, non-IT usage. No, it's made for IT. Okay, so use it if you have IT stuff to monitor, use it. If not, don't. And running our own cloud, Amazon and Google make it look so easy from a marketing perspective that you're always doubting yourself. Should I be up at this point so late at night trying to fix problems that are already fixed by other guys? So that's the main question. Well, then we look at their prices and forget about it and move on. Okay. So the best thing we did, what we like to call event-driven telecommunications. And I think everyone is doing something like this at this point, but it's not really part of the communication. It's something that is underlying the CPaaS movement as well. And I think when we started out 10 years ago, well, not 10, but 7 years ago, when we switched to Node.js, and it just light up, event-driven telecommunications from the bottom up and not from a pooling perspective from the client to the server. So you get WebSockets, Node.js, free switch, event socket layer, and distributed Redis. It turns into magic, actually, So stuff comes in from telecommunication, gets pushed into the screen, and it can come from any source. You just need to build a decent enough orchestration for it to actually become into magic, So this, from my opinion, it's the best thing we actually achieved, is to have this on a stable basis for all of our customers. So how does this address our customer concerns? First thing, from a contact center perspective, they want two things, from my understanding. All the cool new features every year. They're not going to use it, but they want it. And if you don't have it, you can't sell to them, but they're not going to use it. And SLA. So 100% SLA, that's what they are expecting. And I think it's something that we, as a society, have become more and more accustomed to expect, is technology shouldn't break, and that's not going to happen. Technology is going to break. And the thing is, I think, what differentiates companies that can actually move forward and scale their business is to acknowledge that it will break and put plans into motion to accept that fact and actually have stuff in a way that when it breaks, it also continues running. And I think that's the paradigm shift that we are seeing with all the cloud movement, is we are starting to rely more and more and more on the SLA of technology. It's not easy, though, and if you add real-time and telecommunications, even harder. So performance, most of our customers tell us that response rates times need to be very, very low, and that they want to keep their data forever. So You try to explain them that it won't happen like that, and they don't care. Actually, they are paying you to make it happen. So it's one of the biggest things in contact center is they want to know as soon as a call hits the call queue, they want to know in that second, and that's fairly easy. But they also want to have in the same platform the availability of looking into past year's trends, comparing to today, etc., etc. Also in a real-time manner. So performance is a big investment for us. So data reliability. This is a very big issue. Actually, we found out that it's very, very hard to keep data in sync between what the telecom part of our architecture says and the user part of our architecture says. And when you go into a contact center and say, look, we might have a slight difference between, let's say, a user login time between the telephony system and the application layer, and you say like it's 1%, they won't have it. And so keeping data in sync, because all systems lie, in my perspective, there's not a single source of truth, and of course latency between systems and delays and not managed events, etc. They tend to creep into the system. So data reliability is very important. Okay, and call quality. This is not actually an issue that we have because we are not depending on like a CPaaS provider like Twilio, for example. So we are actually a carrier in Portugal and Spain, but although we only do carrier stuff for our customers, but we are interconnected with all the main carriers in both countries. So we don't face any call quality issues. But the thing is, even from an agent point of view, the connection between the browser and the actual telephony system, I'm not sure. We haven't moved to WebRTC yet. We have everything ready to do it. We haven't moved as a strategic decision of not moving, and I'm not sure if we're going to do in the short run, because one of the things that I see whenever I visit a contact center is that they have Google Chrome with 30 open tabs, and they have weak CPUs. They're trying to save money on CPU and RAM, So my opinion these days is just buy a phone and put it on the desk if you want to have audio quality, because there's one thing that's in theory, yes. In practice, you're going to have your CPU and your browser already full of stuff. So maybe don't put voice on it if you are running a big contact center. Okay, so main challenges. So our current architecture is failing us for cloud scenarios, mostly like international scale things. We will release a new version of the software that will introduce a new distributed parallel approach to the same stack. So mostly the same things, but mostly also parallel to be able to basically improve our SLA. And moving forward, we are pushing stuff into Dockers, mostly FreeSwitch. I know a lot of people are already running FreeSwitch on Docker. If someone here is running FreeSwitch on Docker on like very high scenarios, please let's talk. Okay, but we are already in a very close phase to actually deploying everything with Docker as well. Well, it's going to be a fun year for sure. And also on the networking layer, we are beefing up our stuff. So trying to be fully redundant between carriers and data centers and even countries. So this is something that we are having some fun with it already. So this is mostly to, since we are not buying stuff from Amazon and Google, we have to do it ourselves again, Okay, a word for programmable telecoms. We have our own. It's very, very crude. It's basically an abstraction from mod event socket layer. That's the FreeSwitch API. So it runs on Node.js, on Lua, and the transport layer is Redis. We might make it available in the future. We don't know. It's not like a strategic part of our deployment, and I think it's helpful for some people because it actually transforms FreeSwitch into a RESTful API, and also adds the capability of using multiple FreeSwitches and handles off all the problems of where's my call, how should I interact with them. So a word about Twilio. I think we have been speaking about Twilio all day long now. So regarding contact center, once again, Twilio Flex is actually okay for devs. I think they have something there. It's pretty expensive. It starts, their base price is high. I'm not talking about calls. Calls is high. This is very, very expensive compared to out-of-the-box solutions like our own, and you also have to do the code yourself, you know. So I don't know. Doesn't come near, in my opinion, our market at this point. So if you're a big contact center, you don't want to program your own platform. It doesn't mean that a company, a consulting company like a Deloitte or other consulting companies cannot actually get Twilio Flex and implement a project, but I don't see it working very well, in my opinion, at least not with that price point. And it actually screws over their own customers. You know, they have a lot of customers like Talkdesk and their call that are now their own competitors. You know, I think just a word for this, I think it's not fair. And it says a bit of what are they aiming at. On another note, Amazon Connect will actually sponsor Salesforce event, the Dreamforce event, with a lot of money. So it seems to me that Amazon is moving into this space as well. So they have been, of course, developing stuff, but from our perspective, they weren't actually moving. They were just developing stuff. With this partnership with Salesforce, let's see how they will be positioned with Salesforce. But if they come together to actually provide voice capability on Salesforce, it might be also a menace to all the the middleware platforms like Talkdesk, Aircall, etc. that sit on that space, CRM integration of telecommunications space. Okay, so of course, leveraging other people's stuff is good. We decided to start. There was a very good slide this morning between all the steps that you have on Telecom. We are in the lower step. It was your slide. We are on the low end, touching bare metal networking and the open source projects. But I also feel that if you have a particular need and you don't need to mess too deep, just grab a high-level stuff and go on with it if it's fine. So conclusions. Running our telco stack is a huge differentiator and enables us to tackle projects that our competitors, like Twilio-based competitors, can't. We still have a lot of requests to please integrate with my Cisco or Avaya. And I just spent a lot of money on phones. I don't want to replace them. I rather pay you and pay them. So money matters, of course. Also, we are cheaper from a perspective of the stack. So running our own hardware and data centers is another huge benefit in tackling some verticals, and also providing, for example, private connections to our customers. I'm not sure, but around 20% of our traffic comes in over a layer 2 connection. So if you're running on Amazon, that's not what you're going to get. It's going to be hard to get those projects as well. Tech is important, of course, but since the beginning of our company, we are focused on the solution for the end user. So this is a tech speech, of course, but actually what we feel matters is delivering this technology in a way that the end user can actually understand it and use it for every day. Okay, so just a last word for the open source guys. I think it's very, very important giving back, and people usually think about giving back like making code or giving money. It's not only. You can find, backtrace, and report bugs. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir. I hope so. build stress testing tools and share your knowledge. We have been building, for example, a lot of stuff on top of CP, and it's always good to give back to people who want to stress test their platforms. Scale stuff and write how you do it. This is, I think, one of the most important topics in the community. Is everyone starts out the same way, and then everyone gets the same problems, and usually those problems get resolved in-house, and people start to think like, this is my IP. It's not. Let's share, because I think everyone else would like to share as well. And then support events, buy some overpriced t-shirts. That's always a good way to give back. Some of the events that we have been this year, and we're of course very delighted to be here as well. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.